Welcome to Impact News. I'm Carol Angela Davis. These are your news stories for the week. Thank you for watching, folks. Attorney Ben Crump, and we start, of course, with our commentary. Attorney Ben Crump is suing the U.S. government on behalf of black farmers. Folks, during the 20th century, black farmers lost about 326 billion, with a B, billion of land because of discrimination, all right? And now farmers say the federal government breached its contract with socially disadvantaged farmers under the American Rescue Plan Act. That's because a part of the act was repealed, yes, and it was the part that provided funding and authorization for the federal government to pay up to 120% of direct and guaranteed loan outstanding balances as of January 1, 2021, all for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. Attorney Crump says this broke the government's promise and left farmers in foreclosure. We've heard that tale so many times before. Farmers say the law would have benefited 15,000 African Americans, Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Hispanic and Latino farmers, people in the farming industry. The farmers say it is 40 acres and a mule all over again, folks. Broken promises that doomed generations of black farmers to become sharecroppers and robbed black families of billions in intergenerational wealth. And for your information, folks, in 1920, black farmers peaked at nearly 1 million, or 14% of all farmers, folks. But between 1910 and 1997, they lost 90% of their property, all right? By contrast, white farmers, they lost only 2% in the same period. Boy, I'll tell you, they just keep singing that same tune. As of 2017, there were just 35,470 black-owned farms, folks, representing only 1.7% of all farms. So from 14% to 1.7% of all farms. Folks, black farmers lost some 16 million acres, conservatively estimated to be worth between 250 and 350 billion in current dollars. Of course, when Trump was president, he paid out $16 billion in allotments to white farmers, but black farmers, they received only a small fraction of those funds. Stay with me. I'll be back with more news of our community. Stay with me. I'll be right back right after this. We begin with your headlines, folks. Okay, bringing you that news from around the neighborhood and all around the world. Folks, 2 comedians are suing over racial profiling at Atlanta's airport. Plus, an Army vet and model prisoner is dead after what appears to be a prison guard beatdown. Yeah, we'll tell you about that. Plus, are U.S. chemical companies dodging a federal law designed to keep us safe from their crap? Also today, the terrible effects of climate change. Plus, Jamaica makes a very bold move on crime. Then a dumb ruling on guns and serial numbers. Plus, vasectomies, folks, are on the rise. Bet you're not shocked about that. In international news, lights flashing red, folks, for wildlife. And in health news, we continue our series on breast cancer prevention. Stay with me. Folks, comedians Eric Andre and Clayton English, they're suing Clayton County police officers. That's Clayton County, Georgia there. They say the cops racially profiled them at the airport, and that was at Atlanta's main airport. Supposedly there's a program in place that's supposedly aimed at finding illegal drugs, but of course, which officers apparently regularly confiscate passengers' cash and rarely return the money, even if the people are not charged. Okay, we know what that's called, a shakedown. All right, the federal lawsuit alleges that of the 402 stops conducted, drugs have been found, drum roll please, 3 times. Oh yes, okay. Andre is the creator and host of the Eric Andre Show. English is a stand-up comedian and actor. In other news today, a 62-year-old Army vet is dead, and video from the prison, prison footage, folks. It shows that guards broke his neck and then walked past his cell 170 times. Yes, you heard me correctly, and ignored his screams. Apparently, the veteran and inmate, his name Craig Ridley, was slammed to the ground, after which he told the guards he couldn't walk, so they got him in a wheelchair, which he nearly fell out of. They then confined him to his cell, leaving him paralyzed on his bunk after dislocating his neck. These people are vicious. 5 days later, they took him to the hospital where he was intubated and died a month later. Now, despite an investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, no one has been charged in the death. No, it wasn't a life. He was just an inmate and a veteran. Come on, guys. Surely you could do better than that. A medical examiner also ruled that the death was a homicide, listing the cause of death as blunt impact and a major spinal cord injury, and still no one's been charged in his death. A corrections officer described Ridley as, quote, a model inmate. They say he was nicknamed the president by his peers because of his calm personality. Oof. Then a new study says U.S. chemical companies are dodging a federal law designed to track how many PFAS or forever chemicals their plants are pumping into the environment. They're using a loophole to do so, and that loophole was created by the Trump administration in his final months in office. Now, you know those PFAS. They are a class of about 12,000 chemicals, typically used to make thousands of products, water resistant, heat resistant, and stain resistant. They're called forever chemicals because they don't naturally break down. Instead, they accumulate in the environment and in humans. That would be you, folks, okay? All right, so you're in trouble. So we got to make sure we make sure these laws are followed. Studies link them to serious health problems. We're talking cancer, birth defects, liver disease, and autoimmune disorders. Now, the chemicals are estimated to be contaminating the drinking water of 200 million people here in the United States. As an example, there's a sign in Oscoda, Michigan, that warns hunters not to eat the deer meat, okay, after they kill the deer, not to eat the deer meat because of high amounts of toxic chemicals in the meat. Oh, it's on, folks, okay? We got to have the right people in charge to fight this. Looking if you care about your kids or your grandkids. All right, moving on. Looking at your vote. Ron DeSantis, oh, he's at it again, folks, all right? He's a supposed presidential candidate in 2024, so you know he's, quote unquote, making his bones, shall we say. All right, against the Democrats. The Florida governor's new executive order makes voting easier for 1 million voters in Florida's Republican-leaning voting. These counties vote Republican. Lee County, Charlotte County, and Sarasota County, all hit by Hurricane Ian, but not in Democratic Orange County, which was also hit very badly by the hurricane. That's right, folks. All of the counties, all of them, were battered by Hurricane Ian. The governor extended early voting days, yes, sirree, and the ability for voters to send mail-in ballots from addresses not listed on their voting records for Republican-leaning counties only. See, we can't have people in charge who only do things for their constituent base. If you're going to govern, you have to govern everybody, and you have to be empathetic to everybody. Otherwise, you can't govern, which is why DeSantis also has to go. Now, looking at the climate and looking at our survival, folks, Lake Mead's water level is so low now that it is exposing volcanic rock. You're not going to believe this, from eruptions 12 million years ago. Oh, it's on. I keep telling you. As of September, the lake's water level was just 27% of full capacity. And speaking of that, because there's a terrible drought, as we all know, out west, it's so bad. The California regulators unanimously approved a $140 million desalination plant, offering a guideline for how states can convert ocean water into drinking water in light of the worst drought in 1,200 years, folks. Also in climate news, the ground is sinking fast, and we're going to Texas, right around Houston, where the ground is sinking fast, people. Several of Houston's most affluent and fastest growing suburbs are experiencing this ground sinking. That is the word from a new study from the University of Houston researchers. And it's all due to oil and groundwater extraction in and around areas. We're talking Katy, Texas, the Woodlands, Spring, Texas, Fresno, and Mount Bellevue. Experts call it subsidence or sinking earth. Oh, not only is the water rising, the earth is sinking. Oh, my goodness. Overseas, we'll go to Scotland, where the Scottish forest, immortalized by the ancient Romans. Folks, do you know it's almost disappeared? Yeah, okay. Only 1% to 2% of what the forest was in its heyday still remains. You think we don't need those trees? Moving on, looking at the diaspora, going to Jamaica, where the broadcasting regulator is banning music and television deemed to glorify or promote criminal activity, violence, drug use, scamming, and weapons. All right, the government says the goal is to cut back on material that could give the wrong impression that criminality is an accepted feature of Jamaican culture and society. Jamaica had the highest murder rate in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2021. That's according to a research center, Insight Crime. But critics say Jamaica would be better served addressing the root causes of the violence, like the pandemic-fueled economic crisis. All right, let's move on. As a result of the Dobbs decision in outlawing Roe v. Wade, which they thought, they hope will lead to more babies, and specifically they have stated more white babies. Oh, but of course, because they can never think anything through, here's what's happened. More and more patients are seeking vasectomies in light of the Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe v. Wade. In July alone, the Planned Parenthood of the St. Louis region and Southwest Missouri performed 42 vasectomies compared to 10 in the same period a year ago. A St. Louis urologist says before the U.S. Supreme Court decision, folks, patients waited about a month to get a vasectomy, but now it is 2 to 3 months. Also, Planned Parenthood says its website has seen a 53% increase in vasectomy information searches over the last 100 days. From Tampa, St. Pete, Florida, a urologist there says patient registrations for his practice have tripled, and they tripled immediately after the Dobbs decision, with many patients under the age of 30. These people, they just can't think things through. In Texas, the Austin Urology Institute says it's now doing 50% more procedures, folks. A California law that's going to take effect in 2024. It's going to make vasectomies cheaper by allowing patients with private insurance plans to get the procedure at no additional cost other than what they already pay for their monthly insurance premium. Okay? Looking at the military, the first Black Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, is ordering 9 military bases honoring Confederate officers and thus slavery to be renamed, folks. That's right. The 9 bases are Fort Hood, Fort Bragg, Fort Rucker, Fort Gordon, Fort Benning, Fort Polk, Fort A.P. Hill, Fort Lee, and Fort Pickett, folks. We are not out here playing around, okay? And also today, following the so ridiculous U.S. Supreme Court's lead, a judge finds it is okay, you're not going to believe this, under the Second Amendment to remove serial numbers from guns. Now, after they kill you, we can't even track them. Oh, yes, folks, all right? For decades, federal law has forbidden gun owners from scratching out the serial numbers that manufacturers are legally required to place on firearms. These serial numbers help state and federal law enforcement trace the guns that are used in crimes and identify suspected shooters. Ding dong, we kind of need that. Now criminals can remove them. Criminals can remove them. It is so, the lunacy there. It is amazing that they could actually be this crazy and they're running things, but they are, and we got to get everybody out. All right, it all stems from, you guessed it, Justice Clarence Thomas, the smartest man on the U.S. Supreme Court, folks. His ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. In that case, Justice Thomas declared that all gun restrictions are presumptively unconstitutional, folks, if they infringe on the individual right to armed self-defense. Oh, he is just on and popping, and that's why we got to pop him out of there. All right, and that means that he needs to retire. Let's be clear. All right, then finally today, acclaimed ballerina Stephanie Dabney has died. Dabney's African-American. She's a former Dance Theater of Harlem prima ballerina, folks. She inspired a generation of Black dancers and helped reshape classical ballet. She died at the age of 64. Her style on stage became a standard setter for the Dance Theater of Harlem for nearly 20 years. So we do mourn that passing. We thank you for listening. Stay with me. You know I'm going to be back with Ask Dr. K, the international report, also missing the slay word, and of course the financial news. Stay with me. Time for that slay word of the week, folks. The word this week is palmary, P-A-L-M-A-R-Y. That, folks, is an adjective. You know what that means. It modifies or describes that noun. Its origin is from the Latin in the 17th century, and the definition is preeminent, superior. Examples. Let's use it in a sentence. Cedric's palmary performance during the spelling bee won him the grand prize. Also today, as a teacher, her palmary role was educational, but she considered the emotional development of her students to be equally important. Well, we appreciate her superior teaching. Palmary, it means preeminent, superior. That is your slave word of the week. Use it all week and level up that vocab, folks. Stay with me.
Anyone who thinks that slavery ended in the 1860s with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation are grievously wrong.
If we caught a bird, we ate through the feathers and ate the bird. We didn't have nothing to cook on. We didn't have no stove.
You know who you are and who we are. We're still on that big plantation.
She was bonded to them until they died. She was their slave.
They said, "Bro, we're gonna be killed tonight."
Could that same white dude keep terrorists there, or Russian spies, or the KGB, and the government wouldn't know it? No.
They thought I was beat so bad that I couldn't do nothing, but I did.
Are you, Tianda Slater? We are out there looking for you. We want you to know. We want everyone to know we are looking for our missing African American girls, and with the community's help, we'll find you. Chicago police say Tianda Slater was 15 years old when she was reported missing from the 1000 block of North Milwaukee Avenue in the Noble Square neighborhood. Slater is 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighs 115 pounds, and has brown hair. She was last seen wearing a black windbreaker, light blue ripped jeans, and black gym shoes. Please call 1-800-THE-LOST, 800-843-5678 with any information about the case of Tianda Slater. Where are you? We are looking for you. We are continuing to broadcast this information because with the community's help, we know we can find you. Back at you, we have the international report for you, and there is some very disturbing news about our wildlife. What's going on, Eni?
Oh, it is very disturbing indeed. The World Wildlife Fund released a report on Thursday, this past Thursday, that basically says that in the last 50 years, there's been a devastating decline in the world's wildlife populations. And it's because of humans. We have cleared forests, polluted the air, polluted the land and sea, and these animals have just disappeared. And the findings were based on the World Zoological Survey, and that features 32,000 wildlife populations of 5,230 species from across the world have declined. It's quite bad in Latin America and the Caribbean, in Africa and in Asia. And we're trying to bring attention to it 2 months before the world meets again for one of the COP, the environmental meetings. It's going to be held in Canada, I believe, because China was not ready to host it. And we're hoping that we can bring this devastating matter to the attention of world leaders.
I'll tell you something, because have they said anything about why there's more in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa?
No, it just says that it's seen some of the steepest declines in that part of the world. But, look at the sea, look at the plastics in the sea. Those islands are dominated by the sea life. So you can imagine that those marine animals have been destroyed.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, I hope we can pull this off, i.e. saving the planet that we happen to live on. Let's just hope everybody's on the same page on that one, because if they're not, we're in trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, the analogy of the lights flashing red, I think is very, very powerful, because it should stop us dead in our tracks. It stopped me dead in my tracks when I heard this.
Let's hope it stops the people who make the rules dead in their tracks, because so far they've been failing us. Thank you so much, Dr. Inyang Ebong Harship. Of course, she brings you the international report every single week, letting you know what is going on around the world and how it impacts your life. Thank you, Edie.
Thank you, Carol.
Stay with me. In financial news, folks, the Social Security Administration, well, it's announcing an 8.7% COLA hike. It's the largest hike in 40 years, folks. It means that starting in 2023, retirees on Social Security may see an average increase of $144 in each monthly paycheck. The boost is going to help you meet the rising cost of goods and services, all driven by inflation, because it's going to improve the buying power of nearly 70 million Americans, all who receive Social Security benefits. For seniors on Medicare, you should also know that you're going to get an additional financial relief in the form of lower Part B premiums in 2023. All right, speaking of inflation, and there being just a few big companies out there, which is why they don't have any competition in each sector. They don't have any competition, so they can charge you whatever they want. All right, here's more on that. Get this. Kroger is in talks about a merger with Albertsons. Yeah, okay. The deal is going to create a U.S. grocery giant. Albertsons has a market value of about $14.5 billion. Kroger has a market value of about $33 billion. The resulting giant will be of comparable size in groceries to Walmart, which is the U.S. market leader. The deal faces scrutiny from U.S. regulators before it can go through. All right, and then finally today, here's another reason prices go up: climate change. The Mississippi River, folks, is so low. It is so low, folks, that in some places the barges are stranded, causing major shipping delays, if you can believe this. And of course, we know what the problem is. It's a lack of rainfall. We know that. The barges are now getting stuck, leading to at least one recent traffic jam of more than 2,000 vessels backed up. Can you imagine? The Mississippi River Basin, it produces 92%, just so you know, of U.S. agricultural exports and 78% of the global exports of feed grains and soybeans. A single hopper barge, folks, can haul as much dry cargo as 16 rail cars, and you know how much they're putting in the environment, or 70 trucks. A 15 barge tow keeps 1,000 trucks off the highway, all right? We gotta have rainfall. To do that, folks, we have to address climate change. A barge can move 1 ton of freight 29% further than a rail car and 4 times further than a truck. Now, we should tell you that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is currently working on deepening the Mississippi River from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Stay with me.
I'm just sick and tired of us not spending time together lately.
I know, baby. I know. I'm sorry I've been spending time with you. I've just been working on this big deal. It's gonna bring a lot more money to the household for it.
What you doing here, boss? Yeah, just checking to see if you still got it.
You take this work. You partner. I don't want it back.
I've seen the movies, man. I know how this goes.
You see the movie, huh? Did you see Goodfellas? New Jack City?
Everything I do is for you. Like, I just need a little bit more time, man. Fine bullshit. Like I said, he's gonna call any second.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why don't you take a look at this video? Guess what? It's starring you.
We're back at you, closing out the show with Ask Dr. K, as we always do, because we always want to be focused on your health and well-being. Welcome, Dr. K.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Still October, and we are still talking about breast cancer as it affects women of the African diaspora. So today, we're going to talk about the BRCA gene. What if you have been found to have the BRCA, BRCA breast cancer gene? Now, this is the most common gene, but they know that there are 15 separate genes in our genome that can lead to the diagnosis of breast cancer, this being the most prominent. As we live our lives and talk about prevention, our goal, even when we inherit the BRCA gene, is to not allow the gene to express itself, because we can have many different genes, but not every gene gets expressed or turned on. So how do we try not to turn on the BRCA gene? Well, one of the things is the environment. And that's the whole environmental justice movement, is that some of the toxins in the environment can activate certain genes. And then we know, we call it things like Cancer Alley, but really what it is, it's an environmental pollutant turning on a gene. The other thing that can turn on the BRCA gene is a meat-based diet, inflammatory diet, chemicals that are in it, inflammation that are in it, and therefore the most healthy way to try to hold this gene at bay is maintaining a normal weight, staying away from anything that is based on animals. That includes dairy and meat, and eating a whole foods plant-based diet. This is an anti-inflammatory diet, and it may hold off recurrence of breast cancer in those people that have the BRCA gene, and it may hold off the initial expression of the BRCA gene, getting regular exercise. So even though we have this in our genome potentially, let's see if behavioral and food and lifestyle factors can cause it to not be expressed.
Well, you have to do something. I mean, if the gene is sitting there, you know you've got it. It would seem to me, and people love meat, but you know, we did the story on the news this week that says that they're telling the hunters in Michigan that are killing the deer, don't eat the meat because it's full of chemicals.
Exactly. And the thing is, you know, if we know, but suppose we don't even know that some of our everyday choices could potentially be turning on this gene, or perhaps we don't even know that we have the gene.
Well, one thing's for certain, we know corporate America, and we know corporate America isn't doing that much to keep us disease free because it's all about the money. Thank you so much, Dr. K. And next week is our last week on breast cancer. You should have learned a lot. I know I did. Thank you so much, Dr. K.
Thanks for having me. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you. And from all of us here at Impact News, we'll see you next week for another great week of important information. I'm Carol Angela Davis.